looking for a modern deck that won't break your wallet but might just break your opponent's mind? Have I got a deck for you. White-Green Bogle Enchantments. White-Green Bogle Enchantments is a contentious budget brew that relies on hexproof creatures stacked high with enchantment auras in order to evade both creatures and most forms of removal. The deck... Stop. Wait. Before we continue, I need to settle something once and for all, and that is in regard to Boggle versus Bogle. Now, as you all know, I've had my share of mispronunciations over the last few years. Fair enough. However, Boggle versus Bogle is not an issue of mispronunciation. It's an issue of word meaning. Both are words, but let's look at what each of them means. A bogle is a term for a ghost or folkloric being, which is what these Lorwyn creatures are. Boggle is a verb that means to overwhelm or bewilder, as with the magnitude, complexity, or abnormality of. For example, the speed of light boggles the mind. Or perhaps the speed of white-green bogles boggles your opponent's mind. Bogles is a deck that generates a lot of frustration because when it works, there's very little your opponents can do to stop these slippery beasties. Best of all, this is a deck that can easily be built for as little as $250, with just a few very minor tweaks to the land base. So it's an ideal build for anyone without a lot of cash, or those looking for a secondary deck to mix things up or just test against. Let's take a look. Let's start with the core cards. These cards are the must-haves of this deck. Things you don't want to cut or trade out. With these cards, you can swing for 5 damage turn 2. With a hexproof creature that's going to be getting you card draw, lifelink if needed, vigilance, first strike, maybe even protection from all creatures. So as far as the core creatures are concerned, that means you have to have Glade Cover Scout, as well as the namesake itself, the Slippery Bogle. You'll want a play set of each, and this is your ideal turn 1 play for every game. As a 1/1 with hexproof, there's very little removal to begin with that is going to hit these creatures. Another must-have are the core Spirit Dancers, who give you card draw whenever you cast an enchantment. 3 of these are a must-have, although some brews do run a full playset. At $7.99 each, they are far from cheap, but seeing as they originated on Zendikar, maybe they are due for a reprint when we return there soon. Only time will tell. Let's talk must-have spells. This is white-green enchantments after all, so the core auras of this deck are Hyena Umbra, Spider Umbra, Rancor, Keen Sense, and Daybreak Coronet. Let's start with the 2 Umbras. With a hexproof creature whose attack and defense is going to skyrocket, there's already not a lot that your opponent can do to remove them. Damage-based sweepers like Anger of the Gods are rendered useless, as these Umbras are both totem armor, which means they'll remove all damage from the creature they enchant should it be destroyed, and then just sacrifice themselves instead. The reach and first strike that they grant is just icing on the cake. Rancor is pretty self-explanatory. +2 to attack and trample on its target, and if they do somehow kill your creature, Rancor itself returns to your hand. At least 2 Keen Sense is another must-have, although once again I do know many decks that run 3 or even a full playset. 1 green gives you an enchantment that will get you card draw every time your creature hits, which means a serious draw engine goes online as early as turn 2. Now, Daybreak Coronet used to be one of the most expensive pieces of this deck, but since it's reprinting in Modern Masters 2, the card has fallen to a healthy price of only about $7 each. Also, it now depicts a Leonin wearing a scarf, so that's pure value right there. In addition to a kitty wearing a scarf, the card gives an already enchanted creature +3/+3, as well as first strike and vigilance and lifelink. But that's all secondary to the picture of a scarf-wearing cat. Why wasn't this card in Theros? Oh, well, that's because... Oh, so cute. Where was I? The final piece of our core cards is another modern staple, Path to Exile. At least 3 of these main board is a must, disrupting everything from Splinter Twin combos to Infect to even Amulet Bloom decks. Most decks also run 1 to 2 Dryad Arbors. There's a lot of advantages to the Arbor, but one of the biggest is using your fetch lands to fetch out an Arbor. Some alternative options that tinkerers like to tinker with would be enchantments such as Spirit Link or Unflinching Courage. Depending on both your meta and playstyle, you can adjust the ratios of the core cards listed above to include anywhere between 2 to 4 of either Unflinching Courage, which is the favorite, or Spirit Link, which is a bit of an underdog. Alright, so far the cost of this deck is at about $125. Now that is without a mana base. Get ready to have your mind boggled, though, because the ideal mana base for this deck is about $375. Wow, yeah, that's mind-boggling. The biggest offender is also our #1 target for a budget cut. Horizon Canopy is $60. That's right, $60 each. And you ideally need a playset of them. That's beyond insane. Luckily, this is a card that helps the deck in the most minimal of ways. Yeah, it's a good card, and if you're going for ideals, you want it. But I recommend cutting it out if you don't already have them and just waiting for a reprint. Feel free to replace them with an extra Razor Verge Thicket, and heck, maybe 2 more plains in a forest, whatever. Cutting these 4 cards shaves $240 off the cost, meaning that with just this cut alone, you can put a solid, and I mean a solid version, of white-green Bogles together for $250. That sure beats $500 for just 4 cards. The rest of the mana base is more reasonable, and also even tweakable for further budget if you wish. Razor Verge Thickets are a must, as are the Temple Gardens, but wooded foothills and flooded strands are easily swapped out if necessary. I would, however, try and keep a full play set of Windswept Heaths on board, unless you really want to go for a budget mana base without them. What about our sideboard? Well, as usual, these are highly flexible, and things like Leyline of Sanctity and Gaddock Teague are usually must-haves that drive the price of the deck even higher. Nature's Claim and Core Firewalker go great with everything from Torpor Orb to either Suppression Field or possibly just Stony Silence. Again, a sideboard in Modern is highly meta-dependent. There might not be anyone playing Affinity at your local game store, or it might be the deck of choice, and that's gonna affect your sideboard. The sideboard I have posted in the description is a basic budget brew. Tweak as needed. In the end, with the cut of just 4 cards, those pesky Horizon Canopies, Bogles can boggle your opponent's minds for as little as about $250. Bogles can be a great way to wet your toes in Modern. It's easy to pilot, puts an enormous pressure on your opponent, and lets you build a deck that won't rotate out for less than some of the soon-to-expire standard decks cost. I hope this video has been of some help to you. And just a reminder text that this video is only here, only available because of the kind generosity of our patrons over at Patreon. If you give so much as $1, you are helping to ensure that these videos continue 3 times a week. But you can also help me out by just remembering to like, share, subscribe, even just by leaving a comment. I'm going to be streaming this Modern deck as well as many others in the days to come. So come check me out on Twitch, or go check out TolarianCommunityCollege.com for some awesome t-shirts and playmats that are available. I hope to see you there.